hints and tips on programming in Scratch. Over the last month, it seems like a bit of a distant memory now. At this stage, we were focusing on the World Cup teams from the semi-finals. There were 4 teams, and basically what I was doing was I was creating profiles of those 4 teams, and you were able to in the first level we were pressing the spacebar to go through each of those, which just changed the costume. Then what I wanted to do in level 2 was to if I hit the up arrow, I'd move up the list, so I go from team 1 to team 2 to team 3 to team 4, and then if I hit the down arrow it would go backwards. However, what I found was the code was quite bulky, and looking at that if you basically it was fine if you went up because you just went to the next costume, but if you went to the previous team there was a lot of code here where, what if you actually wanted to add another team in there. So for so let's say you had 5 teams. In this case, it just works for the 4 teams, because if you added a 5th team, it wouldn't work. So these are they're kind of things that we we might need to figure out in level 3, where we're going to streamline the code so that you can add as many teams as you want. So in order to do that, we have to create right now what we have in our thing is that we have constants, and a constant is a number that doesn't change. So when I hit the up arrow, I'm always checking there's 4 teams, between 1 and 4 teams, and that's not really what I'm interested in. I want there to be between 1 and something. Teams, a variable is what we're looking for. So what I need to do is create a variable called the total number of teams, so total teams, and that's going to have to figure out how many teams there are in this. And basically the way they'll understand they'll know this is if we look at the number of costumes, that's the number of teams. So we need to find out a way of finding out how many costumes there are, and to code that isn't too tricky, but it's a little bit tricky, but thankfully I've done that here for you. What I've done is created a variable called total teams. I'm setting that to 1 because there's always going to be 1 team, and I'm switching to costume number 2. Now the reason for that is simply because I need to basically do a loop. So we're repeating until the costume number that we're actually on gets back to number 1, because that will tell us what we're doing. So we start at number 2, and then we move to number 3, then to number 4, and if we have 4 teams, then we'll go back to number 1, and I want to repeat it till it goes back to number. So I want to switch. We want to start at number 2 until we get to number 1, if that makes sense. And basically what this loop does is it sets total teams initially to 1, because that counts costume number 1, moves it to the next costume, which is number 2, and then it repeats until we go back to costume number 1. And every time it does that, it changes the total teams up by 1, so and goes to the next costume, next costume, next costume, adding by 1, adding by 1, and that will give you your total teams. So we can see here in this that we have 4 teams, so that is making sense. So how does that affect our code? What we'll need to do here is when we hit the up arrow, if the team number is less than the total teams is what we're interested in. So I'm going to change our number 4 there to total teams. That makes sense. Moving down, we're going to stick with 1 because it's always going to be number 1. That is a constant, and that's absolutely fine. So we're good with our code there. The next thing is this bulky little thing here, and I need to change that somehow. And the way I'm thinking of changing this is by giving all the costumes a particular name. At the moment there's no pattern with those names. It's England, Croatia, France, Belgium. What if I was to call these guys Team 1, Team 2, Team 3, Team 4? So that's what I'm going to do. So this will be called Team 1, Team 2, and basically I'll just do the rest, and we'll come back to me in a bit. And I'm just now finishing off the 4th country here. We've done the shirts, we've done the flags, and we're just finishing off the Belgian team here. So there we have our Team 1, Team 2, Team 3, Team 4. For the jerseys, oh, there's a mistake there, I think. That should be Team 3. I'll just change it to a different name. Just make sure the rest of them are correct. Yeah, we're all good there. Now, so what we can do then with our code is we can actually get rid of all that, and we can switch our costume simply to the following, where we're going to join the word team to the team number, and it's as simple as that. And we'll get rid of that code there. Pretty sure that should do it, because basically when you hit the down arrow, it'll change the team number by to -1, so it should do it. Let's test it for 1 and see what happens. Something has happened which is not what we want. Ah yes, we forgot to change the names of the other variables there on the other screens, so we will have to do that. Of course, that makes a lot of sense. Now we go up. Yeah, up is working fine. Down is working fine as well for the for those arrows. So what we need to do then is change it as well for the other costumes. So we go to the other sprites there, previous team. So it's definitely working. We just get rid of that bulky code. So when I receive the previous team, we join the team number. So it's simple as that. So now we've really cut down our code. And the biggest amount of code actually now is setting our total teams. So that's when we set our total teams. We're only doing that on one jersey. And when we go previous and next. So we've really, see how we made the code a lot shorter. Let's try it now and see what happens. We've got England, Croatia, France, Belgium. So we're up and down. Just like we did, not a lot of change, just it makes it a little easier. Now, let's see what happens if we do add in a team. I'm going to add in Ireland to our costumes. So I'm going to go to our shirts. I'm going to open our next team, which is Ireland. Hopefully this will work. Fingers crossed. It's uploading, great. There is Ireland. And what we're going to do is call that Team 5. Next we need the Irish flag, and we have Irish flag. There it is, lovely, and we'll call that Team 5. And then we need obviously to create Ireland. So if you remember from video 1, I just like duplicating Ireland, and we'll change the font to Scratch, and then we need to make it nice and big, and we need to delete the Belgians, pop in the Irish, oops, I'll try that one again. Didn't seem to like something that happened there. And perfect. And there's Ireland. Okay, now we have Ireland as our 5th team. Let's see if it recognises there's 5 teams. That's the big challenge. So I'm going to press the green flag. It should say total teams 5. It does. Let's move up and down. Up. Yes. And down. There we go. So we have our 5th team in there. It recognised we have 5 teams, and we didn't actually have to change any code. And you can keep adding teams, characters, and everything else to make this work really well. So really, that's our project done. Level 3 of our World Cup profiles. Again, you can change it to different characters from the book throughout history. You could even use it for Irish vocabulary. Anything you really want. Best of luck with it. If you've got any ideas that will improve it, please comment below in our channel and under the description. In the description we'll give a link to this particular project, and of course we will put all the links to any of the images that we've used. Hope that helps, and we'll see you the next time.